I don't know if there'll be anybody sitting there. Hey, Mike,
Say, because they seem to be getting it already.
I have extras.
Next time.
Sent one to Lonnie as well.
Okay.
Sure.
And if you have to leave, just was overlay. No one will have. Just take over.
Sarah is calling in for the meeting tonight.
Where?
Uh,
Dolls out when
Are we supposed to be touching those?
okay.
Yeah.
Did
Did you not get yours?
Touch your wish. I got one in mail, but
Oh,
if there's enough here for everybody, I'll go ahead and take one. It just, I thought that we should wait for the commandments.
You want me to email it to?
I'm self-commanded.
Yes.
Well, you're the typical white privileged male, so you can just do it.
Looking a little closer. to
There
Moses.
is no,
With the beard.
uh-huh. There's no consequence for you guys.
That's right.
Rest my case.
Did you get one of these, Mike?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Did you hear about the Sutherland man?
Uh-oh.
Okay, so Friday had a major issue. Went back into town. Chuck Swarm took a look at it. It is stuck in need of a new training. There is a bid from him for a reconditioned training, roughly about $4,000.
Okay, this is a conversation for not during the meeting.
I didn't think we started yet.
I hope we haven't.
oh, yeah, we're late.
We got everybody in there.
We have everybody?
Sarah and Lonnie?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, that went by very fast. Go ahead and call the meeting to order as soon as I figure out where my agenda is. It is 5:32. Let's start with the roll call. John Parker.
Mike Baker.
Cat Stone.
Andrew Shaw.
Lonnie Rainville?
Sarah Thompson.
Mark, it's good to see your whole face.
Oh my God, it's naked.
Gave up on that damn Zoom thing, at least for one day.
I'll go
I
ahead
can't
and
hear
lead us in
how
the
it
pledge.
goes on.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Individual, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, consent agenda, the March 8th, April 5th, and the March financial report. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I read them the ones that were sent. I don't have any issues with them.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda by Kat and Mike. Any discussion?
Just that Mark seconded it before Mike.
Okay,
I'll share the honor.
It's
we'll have a second.
between you
and a third.
guys.
Okay, so all in favor?
I
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, passes. Consent agenda has been adopted. Public comment on agenda items only. Is there anybody online or here that have anything to discuss on the consent agenda or on the agenda items? Nope.
Oh, just the request to maybe consider moving the agenda item 6.7 closer to 6.1.
Sorry, you totally just said that to me for the meeting and
You don't hang out?
Huh?
You don't hang out all night?
No, I
So-
was just at the special meeting and
Oh.
there seemed to be some interconnectivity, so I thought maybe kind of.
I think it's a great idea.
does anybody have, would that mess up general manager's report? Or,
It won't mess it up, but everything kind of ties in together. Everything that is on new business has to do with the site review
Right.
and the progress that we're making, the things that we're doing. And all of the various different steps lead up to what is included in the RFP. So I see potentially lots less questions on the 6.7 if we go through all of the other steps first.
Okay. Yeah. You want a pen so you can put your thoughts down as we're going through? We'll just keep it how it is.
Sure.
They're right up there on that desk. So 6.1 site review report,
Okay.
which is
So something that we started to do that hopefully will make it easier to keep things in line as we go through business going forward is we've started using a cover sheet that kind of summarizes everything that's in that portion of the packet. So the background for the 6.1 is here on the cover sheet, and our site review, our compliance review, which is designed to assist the division to assess how Oregon transit agencies meet the varied compliance requirements imposed by FTA, ODOT, and RPTD. This assessment is done using an on-site review process, and it reviews the 12 areas that are listed below: program management, financial management, operations management, procurement, use and maintenance of project equipment, civil rights, Americans with Disabilities Act, charter and school bus provisions, STIF funding, special transportation fund, and monitoring of lower tier subrecipients. So the report that's attached to that is the full final report that lists each compliance observation, the finding summary, and the corrective action. The last 2 pages that I just handed out right as we came into the meeting is a much more summarized version of that. So it gives the observation number and what the corrective action is and the timeline to fix it, and then where we are in that process. So for compliance observation number 1, the observation was that we have to have the drug and alcohol requirement in all of our subrecipient contracts. The reason for that, I don't know if you'll all recall back when we adopted our drug and alcohol.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So we talked through that, and they did a lot of in-depth questioning on what our process was, how we came to the conclusion of what we were going to do. Bottom line, he said, because we are a 5311 agency, the district is, and the call center, they are employees of the district, and they are subject to drug and alcohol testing policies because they have oversight over the where the vehicles go, and all of the dial ride providers interact with the call center on a daily basis. It is one of those things that we are the overarching agency, therefore it has to be included in all of their agreements. They gave us 90 days for compliance, and the recommendation was that we incorporate it into the RFP and then incorporate it into the contract. And then the compliance comes July 1 when we start the new biennium, new contracts. What that means is every single provider is going to have to open an account with the consortium, which is AccuHealth, and they'll have to send their drivers for a preliminary, it's a new hire drug and alcohol test.
So these are volunteers, aren't they?
They
And-
are.
And I think
Some
that
of
was
them.
an issue that,
So I understand that that is an issue with some of the providers. It's not an issue with FTA.
with the feds.
It's not an issue at all with them. it's a requirement. If
Do they
we,
pay for it? I mean, is it provided payment reimbursement
so the.
if it's required?
The dial-a-ride providers are all reimbursed for their actual costs of what it costs to manage their program. So if they submit those as part of their costs, then absolutely they're reimbursed.
Okay,
So that's where we are with that, is it has to be implemented with the new contracts come July 1.
If they have other, because I know we have like Mercy and,
Mhm.
so do they, if they have other, if they contest other ways, can they do that? Or does it always have to be through the Auction Health?
Well, Aki
And I
Health
don't have no idea how Mercy does it, or if Auction Health is Mercy, or, I don't know.
I think they are.
So Aki Health is the only one that is FTA compliant.
Oh, okay.
When we take somebody to Mercy for after hours testing, they actually have to send, we have to have a contract with Mercy for them to send the sample to Aki Health, and then it goes through the Aki Health process. But they do not have the correct chain of custody forms for it to be, yeah. Oh yeah, imagine my surprise.
Yeah. Gee, the
Yeah.
government is really screwed up and.
Yeah, so they don't have the correct chain of custody forms for it to be compliant
Okay.
at Mercy. So in the incident that we had what they call a qualifying incident, which would be an incident that caused either a fatality or injury that caused somebody to have to leave the scene of the accident in an ambulance, or disabling damage that is not the tires of the vehicle. So if the vehicle, either vehicle has to be towed, no, if the transit vehicle has to be towed or cannot leave the scene. So those are the three qualifying factors. If that were to happen, what we would have to do is call the OcuHealth after hours number so that we could be tested through them. For Mercy, we take them after hours there when it is a non-qualifying event, when we're testing just because they qualify based on our policies here.
Mm,
So
as a random or whatever.
as a post-accident, yes.
How frequently is the testing required besides those situations? When I started driving for that other place, I had the UA, but it's been a while now. So do they have to do it annually or at intervals or ever
It's
again?
Random is the
It's totally
key word.
random.
And one of the things that we have decided through the process of doing the drug and alcohol, the DAMIS testing, where we go through and submit all of our information to the FTA for all of the testing that we've done in the previous year. It was a little bit skewed because we had 6 months that was UCAN and 6 months that was the district. And what we found is OcuHealth does not have the district in a separate pool. It is combined with all other FMCSR, the Federal Motor Carrier Pool. And so for the entire pool, that it requires a 50% random testing rate.
Train engineers,
No, the.
I mean, those are
CDL truck drivers.
CDL truck drivers.
And like most of the heavy equipment operators, like for ODOT or someplace like that, they also go there. Knife River, anybody.
Okay,
that
well,
ha-
that's better than, say you have a company that only has 2 employees. It's kind of hard to have randoms, random.
It's probably random with all
Yeah.
all volunteers from all,
If it was,
it's not just
Yeah.
random for this agency and then random for, it's, everybody goes into one pool and then it's.
and that makes
Yes.
way more sense.
Yes, but what we're gonna do to ensure that we are meeting the appropriate requirements is we're gonna have the district and the contractors associated with the district, everybody that is FTA only, in their own pool. That way we will ensure that we're meeting the testing requirements. And I have already this year alone, I've had 2 people that are no longer employed because they did not pass tests. So,
Because we test excessively,
no,
because we're not testing out of the pool that
because we do post-accident tests.
well, yeah,
And as a result,
but that shouldn't go into the smaller pool.
It
That should be in its own category.
it is.
Okay,
I'm not quite sure what your point is, so I'm
I
not
think,
sure
I
how
think
to respond.
if we are originally supposed to be taking it from the 50% of the larger pool, why would we be more stringent and have a smaller pool?
Because FTA recommended it during our drug and alcohol site review.
And if they recommended, did they?
They recommended that we have our own testing pool like we used to.
Well,
when
I've
we
had
were-
nursing in reviews at hospitals or whatever, and they can recommend some things, but it just depends on who your licensor is or whatever. So a recommendation isn't a requirement.
You're absolutely correct. And part of the reason that we have the number of findings that we do is because we had this type of discussion, and the recommendation was for one thing, and the board decided to do something different.
It's a best practice.
It's a best practice, that's right. And so here we are, you know, we as, no, because I have been reminded I am not part of the board.
Aren't you lucky?
We had this discussion about the drug and alcohol requirements for the dial-a-ride contractors, right?
Mhm.
And the board, as a board, made the decision not to include them. And that is the number one finding that we have, is that's not a board decision. We are an FTA 5311 recipient, and therefore we don't have the option. to
Well, we don't
say
have an
no.
option to. Interesting.
It's a requirement. That's the thing.
Well, I'm glad that we've torn it apart and looked at it thoroughly and seen its guts, and now I know what's going on.
Yeah, okay, so shall we move on?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, moving right along. Number 2, Uptd must develop written procedures to monitor and ensure accountability of all cash and other revenues received by dial-a-ride private providers, and include requirements in the vendor contracts. So the portion of the questioning that brought us here is that the donations received by dial-a-ride providers are not subtracted from the total costs. So for fair revenue, we take the total of our entire program and we subtract fair revenue right off the top. And then the reimbursements are done on the smaller amount, because we take that out off the top. So that requirement was never written into the contracts for dial-a-ride providers for the donations. And I had never dealt with donations because that's not part of what we did when in my previous position. And so I was not aware that that was something that they were also supposed to be doing. So now what we have to do is the dial-a-ride providers need to take their total expenditures each quarter, and they subtract the donations off the top of it, and then they request their reimbursement less the donations.
Was the county ever doing it?
No.
Did nobody did it under the county? Is it a new rule?
No,
My guess is, well, I mean, of course, you're not gonna, why would you reimburse for something you maybe got money for? That's one question, but I think also fare box revenue is not considered matching funds for federal funds.
Oh, I'm just surprised that all of a sudden we are under scrutiny for not doing it we've got a finding for not doing it when it wasn't done before.
So there's actually a lot of that going on. There are a lot of things that have been a requirement, as they stated, forever.
Across the state?
Yes.
Okay,
It's always been a requirement, or it's been a requirement for many, many, many years, but it was never enforced.
okay, slip through the cracks.
So they,
Yeah, Douglas County only had, I recall when we were looking at all the stuff, they only had one finding, which was to include some updated FTA language in the contracts. So when we did the contracts, the last biennium, we just included the new FTA language because that was the finding, the only finding. And now we're finding, sounds like
New findings.
there's a whole bunch of
New
other
findings.
stuff. Now that we're a district, they're actually paying attention and looking.
yeah. All right, so I have that in process, and it will be something that is communicated to the providers as we go through this next quarterly report. Let's see, Uptd must develop record retention procedures to ensure all FTA and ODOT related requirements are met. And so in our packet, we have it says record retention policy as 6.4. But as we went through it and I was looking at all of the OARs and we'll wait till we get. So as I was looking at all of all of the references that were in our public records access policy, because they kind of coincide, public access and the retention. A lot of the OARs and ORSs that apply to them are the same.
Mhm.
And so it made sense to combine the two, especially seeing as we needed to update the policy for records access from DCTD to Uptd. That's something that had also slipped through the cracks. We still had a DCTD one. And so the further I went into it, the further I realized there was just a lot that needed to be included. And so
It's pretty big.
yes. What I thought was going to be 2 pages ended up being, I believe it was 13. So, but it's very inclusive. There is one other form that will be needed to add to it, probably in July if we haven't done it sooner. And that is the record retention form. So going to do a little bit of research and see what's going to work best to decide how we're going to show what we're retaining, where we're retaining it, where we're storing it, so that in the event that we have somebody that wants to access those records, that were maybe 3 or 5 or 10 years old, we'll be able to look it up, figure out exactly where it is and go straight to it in storeroom.
Well, I really am supportive of having that stuff available online 24/7.
How much of that gets digitized so we don't have to have a warehouse size storage room?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's so
Well, a
easy.
lot of it we can, and Christine is amazing at doing that. She has a lot of our stuff digitized already, but part of the thing that we want to also do is make sure that if we were to lose our server or something like that, that we still have access to the records. And so anyway, well, some of them will be duplicate online and still the paper copies for a certain period of time. And part of that is in the record retention policy. And it's
Okay.
in accordance with what the state of Oregon and FTA require.
Including the destruction of records after a certain amount of time.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is there? You know how I hate that.
Well, only the
That's fine.
ones that aren't required for us. Some of our records are like our
Forever and ever.
our agendas, our minutes, all of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're permanent. We cannot destroy them, not ever. And those are all digitized. So,
Yeah, there's one of those CDs I think you have the trainings and stuff. I think there's one on record retention.
yes. Yes. All right, so that's in press. Oh, actually, that could be fixed today if we adopt the policy. All right. Number 4, we must adopt a system of routine service monitoring that embraces complementary service standards. This program should also be extended to other segments and modes of Uptd services. And I'm actually going to refer to further into what they wrote. It says Uptd does not effectively monitor overall system performance to measure the performance of the system, such as the number and percentage of late pickups, percentage of on-time trips, passenger trips per revenue hour, passenger trips per mile, etc. And so they've given us some really good guidance on that. What brought this to our attention is we did not have a list of trips that were late pickups for the paratransit. And the only well, we have guidelines. You only have a 15-minute window before and after. And
Okay, so it would be beyond the 15 minutes, not a late pickup as in 11 o'clock at night.
right, no,
Okay.
within the service window.
Okay,
Right. And so we could very safely say that we know that paratransit is within those service windows, but we have not been tracking whether or not the dial-a-ride providers are doing late pickups or making their pickups within the window. So there's some research that needs to be done, and we'll figure out the best way to ensure that we've got compliance with all of that. All right. Number 5, procurement procedures. They're also on our agenda today. We got dinged really hard on procurement, and part of that is simply because we did an RFP. And so it was a great learning process. I had started our RFP by asking another agency for a copy of a recently used RFP, and then I modified it to meet our purposes. What I did not realize is theirs was not compliant. So, so it was really a good a learning process, but we have a ton of work to do as far as the RFP goes. But bottom line, they said that we had to rescind our RFP. Use the statement that's in the RFP. Uptd has the right to decline to award this contract or part thereof for any reason. Uptd must cancel the procurement, revisit the procurement planning, wherein it imposes on itself the administrative burden to monitor 6 separate contracts, revise the scope of services and requirements to be met, and re-advertise the solicitation. So there were a number of things that happened during the whole of the procurement process. One is simply that we did not have the drug and alcohol requirements in there. Therefore, if nothing else was wrong with it, we still would have had to redo it in order to incorporate that. The other piece is the contract. A blank copy of the contract that they're entering into is also a requirement. And I was not aware of that. And that's why I've been really pushing through to get the contract updated with all of the FTA requirements. I sent that off to Ron Sperry today. I did copy you on that, but since then after I sent it, I realized there was something I missed, so I sent it again. So I've asked him if he can complete the contract review by the end of the week. So the other thing was there was an email that was received from a provider that had specific questions regarding the RFP process. I responded solely to that provider and the board members that were in that email. I did not respond to all of the providers. So that also was considered unfair advantage given to one of our dial-a-ride providers. In addition, there were a couple of phone calls, one with City of Winston and one with Umpqua Homes, where I answered questions. And again, I did not document that I had answered those specific questions. And I did not send those answers out to the rest of the providers.
It was just considered a private conversation that could have been,
Right, well,
Once it's out for procurement,
yeah.
you
You
have
can't
to
talk
treat
to
everybody
anybody.
the same.
So they asked if, because we've been providing service for all these years, why do we have to provide a reference? And so I explained that the RFP was intended for anybody to be able to apply, whether they were currently a provider or a brand new provider. Therefore, a brand new provider, absolutely, we would expect references that we could check to ensure that they were going to be appropriate to offer a contract to or not. And
but at some point you just know you don't have to answer that question anymore because you've been providing services for 3 years or 5 years.
well, and so I just pointed out to them that their greatest reference for this particular contract is the district. They've already been providing service and we actually are their reference, we can say you've been doing a great job. So I answered that question to multiple different providers over the phone, but I did not put it out to all of the people. And so that was considered unfair advantage to those I had phone calls with. So that, and along with the line of questioning that happened during the executive session, I feel that my integrity has been called into question. And so part of what I've been doing through this process is to look for a way to ensure that there's no question as to whether or not everything was done correctly. So there is a procurement software out there that is, it's really pretty awesome, actually. We upload all of the documents into the software, and then we put the solicitation out to bid. So the invitation to bid goes out from the software. So it's time stamped, every email address that it goes to. And so you can tell that you sent it to all of these people. And it's the invitation to bid. And then also there is the information about the pre-application conference. So a week after the documents are available for people to download, then you have a conference where you answer everybody's questions all at once.
Oh, I love it. And it sounds great.
Yeah.
It sounds really, really good. Sounds
then
like we should have had it months ago.
Well, right, and I didn't, I'm always concerned about spending money when you don't necessarily need to spend money. So that's one of those things that I felt like, it was for bigger agencies than us, and do we really need it? But as I went through the process, they did an online thing where they showed me all about the software. As I went through the process, they pulled up another agency that was in similar size to what we are. And they showed me the list of the various different procurements that they have out in the world. And so one of them was for equipment. Okay, well, we have an RFP we need to do for the radios that we're going to have installed in the vehicles. Okay, so now I don't just have one RFP, I got two. We need to do an RFP for the installation of the semi seats. We have seats to be installed at the bus stops that don't have seating. And so the further I went, the more I realized we already have about 5 RFPs that we need to do over the next few months. So it's like really perfect
It'll
timing.
pay for itself pretty fast, and
Yeah.
reduction in headache, and make sure that we dot all our i's and cross all our t's.
Yes, and then every vendor that that logs in, they have to actually register with just their name and their email address, their company. And that's it. So it's a real quick, easy registration, but it shows when they registered and what documents they downloaded. And so that also is timestamped, you know?
And if they ask questions, do you respond and then it just emails it out itself?
Yes, so that you answer all the questions and email them out to everybody that's responded so far. And then if somebody, say we answered all the questions a week and a half in, and then somebody else new comes along and downloads 2 weeks in, then you can see that you also need to have them download the answers to the questions that have already been asked. So they can be included then into the documents.
This is a great
that need to be
investment.
downloaded.
And do they upload as well their proposal?
Yes, they upload their proposals,
So
so
it's
it's all
timestamped,
timestamped.
And
Yeah.
it's standardized from somebody like the federal government?
Yes,
So,
yes.
so
meets
it
all
doesn't
of-
have all those randomized things like we borrowed from some other agency?
No.
That's awesome too.
The other thing that happened was there were a couple of agencies that provided incomplete information. And so what I did is I gave them a call because they were current providers. And I said, hey, actually I didn't give them a call. I emailed them and I said, hey, you didn't provide everything that we needed. Can you please provide that? That was also considered unfair advantage. And so, you know, I really learned a lot.
Complete it, get it in on time.
Yeah,
So this part, what you're talking about now is, so ODOT sent us or emailed me the site review and I sent it out to everybody else. This would be the part where they're saying that we've awarded funds to people that didn't complete the application properly.
Mhm.
So what, maybe you're getting to, what is it we have to do going forward since we gave funds to somebody who didn't qualify for it?
we had to cancel.
And so we're
So they haven't
canceling.
received any of it yet.
Oh, no,
It's not, so it wouldn't start till July anyway.
yeah.
So
So
what sort of training are we going to also be doing for our budget committee to make sure that, or the stiff stack committee, to make sure that they're asking these questions and making sure that the awards we're going to be voting on, or the future board will be voting on, it isn't gonna be.
that's not a decision for that committee. So the timing for the RFP really should have been several weeks earlier than what it was. Actually, I would say several months earlier than what it was. But it seemed premature. And then I'll just be honest, I got caught up in doing other things and it got away from me. But it should have been done in the October, November timeframe so that we had everybody chosen that was going to be a provider before we ever put out the notice of funding availability for the 5310 STF and STIF funding.
So it's possible you could end up reconvening the stiff stack committee to reallocate a little bit if need be,
Mhm.
depending on the outcome of the RFP.
Yes,
But all those awards we made are canceled.
yes.
So
Great.
doesn't that mess with our budget we approved?
No, we're gonna, our budget that we're approving is gonna include oh, you mean for the projects? Yes, that changes everything for the projects. Absolutely. Unless the same providers all do their applications and, yeah, and it all turns out the same, then no. The only funding that would need to be reallocated is the provider that opted not to continue, which was UHI.
Let's hope they
And
don't.
to be honest, it's probably not going to change.
Unless they're gonna use OSB plywood and something. I guess that price went up.
So in the event that we are able to adopt the procurement procedures and the record retention policy and come to an agreement regarding the contract, Then I had the meeting with Bonfire, and that's the name of the procurement software. I have that meeting tomorrow, and I can start uploading documents. And so the timeline could be as soon as next Monday, we could reopen the procurement. And then a week after that, we would have the meeting that provides all of the information, and there will be a lot of information that needs to be provided because there is way more involved than what we had previously done. More than just the drug and alcohol piece, but the preventive maintenance requirements, and but we'll get to that.
Everything will be in there.
Everything
It's
will-
all in there, and it's Betty Crocker, and we don't have to do anything but set it.
Yeah, they'll be able to review their documents for a week before we have the meeting. So hopefully they'll have their questions ready. And then we'll get all of the questions answered at the meeting. And then give a 2-week window for everybody to get their documents complete and uploaded back into the system. And then the other thing that's really awesome about this is that after the deadline is passed, there is a checkbox that opens when you and timestamps it when you open the bid. So it's not like somebody could go in, open a bid and say, "Oh, you know, my friend over here that's applied, I want to give them the opportunity to beat this price," you know. So, and I know that that was probably something that just based on the line of questioning that was thought might have happened previously.
Oh,
So,
well, I really like it. Can we vote on it now?
well, the
Do we
software,
have to?
no, the software, I'm
Okay.
gonna do it, and then as long as we can get everything in place, we can get the RFP. in
Awesome,
progress.
great.
Yep. All right. So number 7, FTD must follow its procurement policy and solicit a new round of competition quotations for the shelter cleaning. So that is, we've used the same contractor for shelter cleaning since 2012 without doing another RFP for those services. And so we'll do a mini RFP for those services. And there's another RFP.
Yeah, that's what I was
How
thinking.
long will the contract be for?
So we can do a yearly contract. We could do 2 years with option to renew. But the recommendation is that we do one at least once every 5 years.
Okay, so this wasn't related to the cleaning of our building.
Oh, no.
Okay, in the ODOT report, it was talking about having the same cleaning crew, and it combined the bus stops and the building. And it was saying that we'd use the same people for 10 years, and it based on defunct Douglas County transportation. But
It was the shelter cleaning.
It was only
Yeah.
the shelter cleaning.
Shelter cleaning was number 7. Let's see. It said, private contractor for the cleaning of 33 bus shelters. So there's that one. Oh, and it gives right there the guidance. While neither FTA nor ODOT no longer imposes a 5-year limitation on the period of performance for other than vehicle contracts, both federal and state requirements stipulate the subrecipient to use sound business judgment and be judicious in establishing and extending a contract's period of performance.
Maybe you do it for like a year with up to 2-year extensions on it. That way, if they're not any good, you can get rid of them, you know,
Yeah,
within a
quicker.
year.
Yeah.
And then you're still doing it for only 5.
All right, so number 8, FTD must initiate the development of lease agreements for ODOT's review, and upon approval, ensure the agreements are executed between FTD and all dial-a-ride vendors. So, you know, I've been with UTrans for 12 years prior to being here, and we've never had lease agreements for our vehicles. It just, that is not something that I was even aware was a requirement.
It is
And-
a requirement. It's not just a culture.
Oh, no, it's a requirement.
Are we
Yeah,
leasing?
Is anybody else doing it?
Is there a lease on a vehicle? I
All
thought
of
we owned
the,
all the, I thought they were all owned outright.
well, so there, on the title, the dial-a-ride provider is, so there's ODOT as the first lien holder, and then the district as second lien holder, and then the provider is the owner operator. And they should be the operator and be leasing the vehicle is how we have to do it. So we have to put together a vehicle lease, and then we have to have all of the dial-a-ride providers sign off on their titles, and we're working on that anyway.
Sounds
Yeah.
like a pain.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
For
There's a lot
the
For no real benefit.
Yeah. Yeah.
For ODOT review and approval, what goes
They
into
have
that?
to approve the lease, just like the procurement policy. I
Yeah.
sent it to ODOT for review
So
first.
each individual provider, they have to approve our lease agreement with them.
No, they have to approve our
Form?
template for the
Oh.
lease agreement, and then we can fill in all the blanks. But we
Okay.
have to be able to provide the signed agreement to ODOT if they request it.
Can we borrow a lease agreement from another agency that is actually meeting with the?
I'm one step ahead of you.
Cool, cool. I like it.
I actually got a whole lot of information from LPD, and they have a department, a whole procurement department, you know.
Lucky.
Yeah, so they had multiple people that were able to answer questions, and they provided me a Dropbox of, I think it was 33 different documents. Some of them in Word format, some of them in PDF, so that I could, print, review, change, modify, whatever I wanted to do with them. So, yeah.
Nice.
And it also shows the whole timeline within a different procurement software. It shows all of those timestamps for the procurement that they did for demand response services back in 2017.
And how often do we need to do that, by the way, for the dial-a-ride?
Should be a minimum of every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
And it can be sooner if we decide that there's a reason to do it sooner. Could be every 2
Could
years. if we
could
want
some
to.
be different, like if we had a new provider, be different than somebody that's existing?
All right, so number 8, that was the vehicle lease. So we've got that in process, and it's just a matter of fitting it in, but it'll be fairly quickly done. It'll meet our deadline without a problem. The current Uptd vehicle maintenance program dated July 2020 does not include all system vehicles. I had them all in the table of contents, but I had missed putting the 2 newer vehicles. So they were there, but they weren't there. So yeah. So we have to finish that. And I have just one little piece left to do that. But in addition to that, we have to modify it so that the dial-a-ride providers are also required to provide their preventive maintenance plans to us, and they're to be kept on file with our preventive maintenance plan. And if you'll recall, I guess it was back when we had Dennis, and he had gone out to do compliance with all of the providers, but when I asked him to provide those documents to me, he said he had just inspected them, that he did not take copies of them. So that's another thing that we got dinged for, is not having the actual copies of those agreements. And that's considered poor oversight. So, yeah.
Do you know if this is going to extend to the medical transport as well?
This is our FTA program.
Is it the medical transport under that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's good.
It is separate. Yep. All right, so those are the two pieces to that, and that won't take long to fix either. That we're already in process on that. And then number 10, and this printed on both sides, so you have to flip
Oh,
it over.
I wonder how we went to 14.
You also follow along on the purple.
I am.
Okay.
I just couldn't find number 10. It went immediately to 14.
So the other piece is the vehicles that they picked for us to show our compliance with preventive maintenance intervals. Of course, were the vehicles that were not completely in the plan. And so there was no documentation of the fact that these vehicles are on a miles or hours. So we can have that preventive maintenance done at an interval of miles or an interval of hours on the vehicle. And if the service interval had actually been 5,000 miles, we would have been spot on 100% compliance, because we were in that plus or minus 500 of 5,000 miles on every single one of them, except for when I actually got the requirements into the policy. The internationals are 9,500 miles, and they're not 5,000. There are 3 different versions of it. 5,000 miles is if you are you're running, well, we're close. We just don't fit into the 5,000 mile range. And I know that when we got them, we had the conversation with our service provider and explained to him that we didn't know where we were going to fit, and we would follow up on it after we saw how things were
So
panning
we
out.
can do it less often at 9,500 miles instead of
Yes.
5,000. So we've been doing
Yes.
it twice as often.
Yeah.
Than we needed to. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Say that again.
So the manufacturer's recommendation for the internationals, instead of having preventive maintenance done every 5,000 miles, like most of our vehicles, it is every 9,500 miles. And so we were in the range that we had specified, which was 5,000, but that was actually, we were 100% out of compliance because it should have been 9,500.
They
Oh, so
wanted us
because we were
to.
doing it too often, we were out of compliance.
Yes.
Okay, I was just trying to make that match the
That's
last.
kind of weird, but
statement
it's
on
out
the
of
purple
compliance
sheet.
if we've been doing it too often.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you gotta,
Because even if you did it twice, then you're in,
Yeah,
every
you're
other time
way
you're
in compliance.
but they don't let you spend the extra money if you don't
Yeah,
have to.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And I think it's safer.
Yeah, well, so that's the other thing. The internationals have been notorious for having things just randomly go out on every single one of them. So the brakes, the calipers went all the way through the brake shoes. And that happened on one vehicle, and within like a 2-month period of time, it happened on all 5 of them, even though the brakes were still good. So there was an issue with it, and we had to have all of those brake systems replaced. And
Can't you just downshift and deploy the parachute?
Yeah, yes, yes. The afterburners.
so in some ways, having the 5,000 mile limit on it instead of the 9,500 has been good, because we did catch a lot of things before the rest of the buses caught fire.
But it makes us out of compliance.
Because we're spending more money than we need to.
Oh, I get it.
We'll
Also change them a
be,
little more, so your environmental side will be happy that we're going longer.
yes. All right.
Whatever. I just, so mean.
So the other thing that they suggested on that one is, so since we came over here to be the district, we started doing our pre-trips on a program called Fleetio. So you can actually, the drivers can pull it up on their phone, and from the phone, you can go right in and enter your your pre-trip and your post-trip.
Your mileage,
Yep, so,
odometer reading.
yep, it goes with your odometer reading and you know that you've checked your headlights, your tires, your flashers, all of those things, you've cycled your lift.
Your air flaps, your rotors and all the things, that's.
Well, you know, your oil, your transmission fluid, your
check your pressures.
belts to make sure there's no frays in the belts and that it's not more than 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So it's something that they can do electronically. And then it comes in and we can pull reports on it. We can pull our service reports on it. And so we did not have any documentation at all that our dial-a-ride providers are doing a daily pre-trip on their vehicles. So again, that was a poor oversight of the dial-a-ride providers. And so they suggested that maybe we add them into our Fleetio, which then would get, you know, initially we'd have to do some training.
Mhm.
And we have what we call the fat finger issues, you know.
Yes,
Sorry, I fat fingered it, you know. So, you know, there are errors, but they're usually pretty obvious when they come up. You know, you've put 200,000 miles on your vehicle
in
and
a day,
yeah,
yes.
that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if we were to add the dial-a-ride providers into our Fleetio system, then that gives us better monitoring without undue hardship on the providers. The only challenge is not all of the providers, well, Jennifer's probably the only one that would not have necessarily good reception
Mhm.
for it to be able to transmit to us, you know. But yeah, it can be done on your phone or a tablet, and it's immediate and it meets that compliance piece. There,
She might where she starts out if you're doing like a pre-trip or.
she might, yeah.
post-trip, yeah.
So it is actually a pretty minimal cost to meet the compliance piece as well, because it is $5 per vehicle per month. And so right now we have, and there's a discount for paying it a year at a time. So right now we have 17 vehicles on it, 18 vehicles. I think we archived 2. So, you know, it's just one of those things that helps keep us in compliance and gives us a lot of data.
$100 a month is nothing to keep us out of trouble.
So that's
$100
something
a
that
year.
we're looking at as well, is adding Fleetio into something that the dial-a-ride providers will be doing, not right now immediately, but on the new contract going forward. All right, so we went through all of the process of creating a facilities maintenance plan. We went through and we listed everything that you could think of in this plan, right? I mean, the fixtures in every room, you know, everything. And the only thing that we did not do is sign off that we'd actually inspected. So we have a plan, but we have no proof that when we created that plan, we actually inspected. And we didn't give a timeline as to when we were gonna inspect, how often. So we could do inspections yearly or every 6 months or every quarter. But we just have to modify our plan so that we have a spot for somebody to sign off that they did it, you know, who did it and what the date was that they did it. And then I think part of that compliance is we're gonna have to submit that to,
Who does that?
ODA.
Is that UPD, Uptd staff, or is it also the dial-a-ride provider? Is it the drivers?
it's this facility
Just this facility. Okay.
and the shelters.
That
Yeah.
was the one.
So, yeah, so we had done it, but we didn't do it to the level
Didn't
that,
cross the finish line. though.
yeah. Yeah, so, oh well. So needless to say, we'll have that one done shortly. The Title VI plan, so I am in the middle of this and we will meet the deadline. And I'll just leave it at that, because I will give it to ODOT to review as soon as I'm done with it. And then once ODOT provides it back to me, then I'll give it to the board for review. And then you'll have to adopt it at a board meeting. We now meet the criteria for the limited English proficiency piece of it. So I've never done that piece, so that's what I'm still working on. So this number 13 is actually more of just a change in the wording in our policy, more so than it is a change in our practice, because we have never suspended anyone in 12 years for no-shows. It's just not what we do. We will always work with them to try to figure out a way to bring that into compliance. Usually when somebody is no showing trips, it is because they are having difficulty with their memory, and it's not helpful, to punish them for not being able to remember something. But then we can make recommendations that maybe they have somebody else help them with their calendar and help them, keep things in order. But we're just going to change the wording so that it actually meets the FTA requirement, and add a progressive suspension policy that, again, it's the wording that needs to be changed.
Is the policy going to say something like, whatever the frequency and the, I guess that does do time and number, but is that you may be or that you will be?
Is it actually, they have to show a pattern of habitual.
And if they, let's just say they meet whatever definition we create.
Mhm.
Is it a you will be now suspended, or you may be? And we still
We're
have
gonna put
discretion?
maybe.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
ODOT in that email, I do recommend if you guys haven't open the email and read it, because there's extra stuff in there that's not in here. What they said was our policy pretty much says definitively, if this, then that. And I agree with what they mentioned that we adopt is more of a understanding, and it goes into it over here on corrective actions, that somebody who misses, say our policy was 3 missed trips, you're done. Well, is that 3 missed trips within 6 weeks, or is that 3 missed trips within a whole year?
Lifetime.
We need to be understanding of situations and apply that.
But
to our
is it
policy.
mandatory for us to have that policy?
Yeah.
Why?
It is just part of the ADA paratransit.
Oh, we
Yeah.
should just
If
be
we're-
able to say that everybody is their own person and makes their own decisions, and we're not God.
We have to have a suspension policy.
And we have to have
a
records for
suspension.
it too, so that way if somebody is missing a certain amount of times, we can, and they sue us, matter of fact, that's what ODOT mentions in the email, is should the district be sued for something, we could then say, well, no, actually, you missed 18 pickups in 3 months. And that's why we suspended you, where you have a friend that that missed 10 days last year. Theirs was once a month. Yours was 18 in 3 months. So we got to be able to protect ourselves in lawsuit, but also we have to have a policy, because we have to be able to suspend somebody. And it could be multiple offenses with the missed rides added to those other non-related multiple offenses. So it's good for the policy, or for the district. to
Oh,
have a
that
policy.
sounds totally bureaucratic, because I just wouldn't suspend anybody unless,
And we
They-
haven't.
yeah, and we don't do it in practice. So why should we have a policy why should they demand a policy?
Well,
Just to protect us from something that we're not gonna do.
what we adhere to is what they're asking us to change it to.
Oh, I understand
Yeah.
that. I'm just,
Yeah.
irritated with the policy. I'd just rather not have it.
We're beholden to the purse holders, and we're not the purse holders.
Ah, we
Yeah.
agree on so much and
And
going
yeah,
forward.
So that will be complete as well.
Almost, almost.
I still want to share your news, but I'm not going to share your news.
Oh, you can totally share my news. I
No,
was gonna
we'll do it
tell
after
you
the-
how
after all
irritated I
this.
was with Weimar.
All right, so the next one, number 14. FTD's ADA paratransit information for the public does not include procedures required by FTA to allow visitors to utilize the service for 21 days per 365-day period by demonstrating the visitor is eligible in their home jurisdiction. So basically, if somebody comes to visit and they're going to be here for a month, and they are qualified for paratransit wherever they come from, we automatically accept that qualification and provide them service like we do for any other paratransit qualified person. And we have that in our policy, but we don't have that information online. So that will be online this probably
Do we
this week.
provide somebody that does qualify? I mean, this is normal part of our business. Something, a document or something that says you're qualified? So you can just take that.
Yep.
So how
Yeah,
do we
they-
verify the qualifications? Do we call Biloxi,
Yeah.
Louisiana and say, hey, do you
Just
know
accept it, I
so-and-so?
guess.
Or do we
They,
just take their word for it?
well, it would depend. I mean, if they were an able-bodied person and you're kind of wondering why they would be using paratransit, and I don't know.
But I'm not saying whether you,
John wants something like a vaccine passport.
Yeah,
yeah. no.
especially if it
What I'm-
says
what I'm saying
Biloxi,
is, what-
Louisiana.
What this says
We
is
give
that
them
they
an
qualify
awards
where they're from, they're here, but, I mean, it's kind of rude and discriminative to say, you don't look like it, can you prove it?
So, in order to use paratransit, they have to fill out an application and be qualified based on the fact that they have a disability that makes it to where they cannot use the regular transit system, right? And they are guaranteed a ride if they call at least 24 hours in advance. So if they called today to schedule a ride for tomorrow, we cannot refuse that ride. It's like if they were to be able to go out on the bus, they.
But they
they'd
say,
be
I
able-
just moved up here from Sacramento.
Mhm.
And I used to be down there.
So, and then what they do is they say, and here's my awards letter from, I don't know, Sacramento County Transit. I don't know what
So
they
they
are
have to
down
bring
there.
their papers with them?
Yeah, they have to show their awards letter to show that they're qualified.
You see, because
Other-
they're qualified.
Otherwise, they just fill out a new one.
Yeah, otherwise they would, well, what we do is, we
Papers.
do a temporary
Later?
approval.
Oh, gee.
What is the word? Yeah, we do a temporary approval, and we do that a lot for folks that are in the various different care facilities. They'll call and they'll need a ride, but they need it tomorrow for an appointment tomorrow. And there's no way for them to be able to fill out their application and get all of that in next day, so we do a temporary approval. We provide them with the application to fill out when we go and pick them up. And then they get that back to us, and we do the permanent approval and the letter.
If they don't turn it back in, do we do another temporary approval or?
Well, what we do is if they continue to access the service for more than 30 days beyond their temporary approval, because we usually get a 30-day temporary approval, then we'll request that they turn in the application. And we'll remind them, you still haven't turned that in yet. Can you please either mail that in and most of the time they've just forgotten.
Mhm.
So a lot of times somebody will help them fill it out. Cindy down in our downtown office is really good at that. She helps a lot of people fill out their application.
So how does this apply also to dial-a-ride?
And
Because I know there's been confusion between paratransit and dial-a-ride.
so dial-a-ride is on space available basis. They are not a guaranteed ride. They are a ride if there's space available. Paratransit is a guaranteed ride if they call 24 hours in advance and they qualify for the service. So one is an FTA requirement, the other is not. So, yeah, so it doesn't, this does not apply.
So
to
if you
dial.
exceed your number of seats, you're basically having to then put seats on a dial-a-ride van. Guarantee, is that how you do it, or do you just?
We could do it like that. We haven't come to that point yet. We have, I don't know, it's probably been 5 years ago. We started the practice of throwing a third paratransit vehicle out there for that middle of the daytime. Because there were always, seemed like 3 or 4 rides, at least 3 or 4 days a week that we would have had to deny. And when it really came to my attention was when somebody called to schedule a dialysis 3 days a week. And I was listening and hearing that the dispatcher was going to decline that. And no, because that's not one decline. It is for, if they wanted 3 days a week for the next 3 months, that is, you know,
That's guaranteed, right?
yeah, that's 30 declines, and that puts us way out of compliance.
Well, that person would die.
Well, they would have to find another
They're
way.
sitting there after dialysis, they're miserable enough.
Yeah.
And is
so
this like the 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock hour,
There,
or is it not an hour?
it starts at about 10 o'clock in the morning until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's usually the range that our third driver is driving,
That's a big chunk.
couple of days a week. Yeah. And it's not always.
So just to bring up a challenge statement between the two services. Now, paratransit guarantees the ride, but there's a cost, $4 each way, or $8 round trip. There's a suggested donation of any amount for dial-a-ride, but it does not hinder them from getting a ride. So those are the two differences in how the services operate. And that needs to be noted too, because we have a large number of people that have very little income. And if there's an opportunity for them to utilize a service that gets them to point A, from point A to point B with even less cost,
Absolutely.
then people are going to try that. So there's been confusion because paratransit and dial-a-ride qualifiers are very similar.
But paratransit is guaranteed, but it's paid.
Right. Now, the other piece is that paratransit is looking at more of those folks that have definite mobility issues. Not so much for folks that are tied to dial-a-ride. They have their issues, they have their challenges, but they're fairly mobile for the most part. But they can qualify for both.
True statement.
Thank you.
All right.
Pretty steps.
Okay, the next one, number 15, and this is a training issue with the dispatchers. They asked for our trip denial log. And so I asked for it and we just scanned that over to them. And what the dispatchers are doing is they were tracking every single time that they deny a trip, which there were for paratransit. So there were about 10 denials, but the reason that they denied the trip on every single one of them was it was the same day request and there was no driver available. And that's not a true trip denial. So we actually didn't have any trip denials, but the dispatchers were not.
Oh, they were logging them incorrectly.
Yeah. So this is just, we still have fairly new dispatchers. And so it's just one of those things that comes with time and we'll monitor that better. So we've already had a couple of discussions about it and put a different process into place. And the other piece of that, it was. Okay, so Uptd must adopt monitoring procedures to demonstrate that it is not experiencing capacity constraints within its complementary paratransit service. So We know that only because we're not denying rides. But we do not have anything that shows that we're tracking that. And so that's what we have to do.
Does that capacity constraints tracking maybe get us more money?
No.
So why would we do it?
Because we're required to ensure that we're able to meet the demand.
That's what the purpose is.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's kind of more like a planning tool.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a whole bunch of denials, you'd be looking for another vehicle driver.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
could get us more benefits.
Potentially. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If we're tracking this, how strained our system is, we should either get more money or more
Could
equipment.
also be if we're asking for another one and we don't have any denials or not showing a big need for it, then maybe you don't get it either.
Yeah.
So this next one, number 16, is also, this one is primarily dial ride and dispatch. It's a combination of the subscription trips are when at the beginning of each month, somebody says, I want trips on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every week this month, and I want to go wherever it is that they want to go. It could be, most of our subscription trips are for medical appointments to dialysis or cancer center, physical therapy, those kinds of things. But there were a lot of people that were scheduling subscription trips, like to go to the gym or to go
Beauty shop.
grocery shopping. Yeah, or, just random reasons. Sometimes they wanted to have a trip available to them so that today I can go to the bank and tomorrow I can go grocery shopping and the day after that I can do.
Like a normal person who had a car.
Right, yeah. And so the FTA requires that we cannot have more than 50% of our demand response trips as subscription trips. Because what that does, it eliminates the ability for somebody who calls for that same day trip to get that trip. And we are there, we are so there. And that is because of COVID mostly, because the vehicles that typically transported 4 people, 6 people, up to 9 people, some of them, they're limited to 2 riders. And so that's a real constraint. And then some of the riders, especially if they're in a mobility device that's larger, that eliminates the ability for a second rider in the vehicle, so that has definitely become an issue. I am every single day hearing the dispatchers talk to people who are calling in asking for rides, and there's no space available. So it's very, very real. And when I started talking to them about subscription trips, I actually started when they were still out in Sutherland, and realized that was a conversation for another time, because at that time I was still the adversary and just trying to impose rules that that didn't really mean anything, So now they've really come around and to the point where they understand the language, they understand what a subscription trip means, and why we're supposed to track it, and that there are consequences for not tracking it, and the attitude is much different. So they're tackling that right now.
How do we track it to keep it at 50%?
Well, so that is also an issue, because at 7 o'clock in the morning, we only have one provider that is out there, and that's Mercy. And they actually still take 4 people in their van, because it's what they call a cohort group.
Oh,
That they travel together Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and they go to dialysis from South County, right? So they take 4 people in their van. So we have 1 van out there with 4 seats available, and they're all full. So we are at 100% capacity until the next provider comes on.
At 8 o'clock.
8:30. 8:30? 9. Do you guys, are you 8:30 or 9? 8:30. Yeah. So we're at 100% capacity until 8:30 when UVDN comes on board. And then at the same time UVDN comes on board, also UHI. But then you've got those extra vehicles from 9 until 2. And then you're back to like 1 vehicle until 5 o'clock. And so a lot of the time we're at that 100% capacity.
And if UHI is dropping out, then we're even more stressed.
No, we'll give that van to somebody else.
Oh, okay.
So the subscriptions trips are something that it'll take us a little while to bring it into compliance. Once they lift COVID restrictions that reduce our seating capacity to 50% of what we have on the vehicle, it will make a huge difference.
So it's a requirement for the 50%?
So the requirement
It's
is
a requirement to track, I see that. But
Oh,
is it-
yes.
Is it a requirement to,
that we have
that we're staying
50% or
within
less.
50%? Yes.
So we've got to set a cap like every day.
Yes, well, and not just every day, but between certain time periods. All right, so number 17, Uptd must develop and have available on information on information on how individuals can request reasonable modifications that will be evaluated by Uptd staff. So we have a reasonable modification policy that we adhere to, but we do not have a form that somebody can readily access and fill out and request that. Typically, the requests come to us through a driver, and the driver will say, I've got this rider, they get on at this stop, but that requires that they walk a mile or half a mile or whatever in order to get home. And there's this other option available. Can we stop closer for a flag stop? And as long as it doesn't create a direct threat, so it's not a safety issue, it doesn't change the nature of our service, and it's being requested by an individual with a disability, then if we can modify the stop, then we do that.
Did you try to modify stop times then at other stops, maybe where there's nobody there to make up the time? And
It kind of,
Stand schedule there,
it all
just
kind of
balance
evens
out.
out, yeah. Yeah, so we just have to put a form online and a form on the buses that people can actually request it without having to ask the driver.
If it wasn't documented.
Makes sense.
We're going to filing cabinet on the bus.
Yeah.
So number 18, Uptd must work diligently with these 2 entities. Oh, okay, so City of Reedsport and North Douglas Betterment are both entities that had wanted access to STIF funding. So City of Reedsport actually did turn in their amendment to their contract, and they do have that funding accessible to them. NDB has not. You know, we talked with them. We went over the contract amendment. They came here and discussed that, but they have not turned in their contract
So we
amendment.
pretty much approved what they requested.
We approved it, but they
We
had,
haven't signed it.
they
Weren't weren't they waiting for something to be kicked to them to review?
they've had it.
Oh, because since then I was contacted about, they just said they haven't received anything yet. So I thought they were still waiting on receiving something.
If they're waiting on something, then they should probably let the person that's responsible to provide that something to them
Okay, well,
No.
because the potential for people that need to be provided services, I think the district should probably go ahead and reach out to them at least one more time and say, hey, tickle the belly of that beast, just
I
what's
have,
going on? You have?
as recently as, I believe it was the 7th of April.
Okay.
And that's in email.
So when did Reedsport turn in their stuff?
They turned theirs in a long time ago, long time ago. Like, I want to say November, something like that.
So what is it North Douglas wants?
They came to the meeting and we did pretty much what they asked, like back in fall.
Mhm. I had, their concern was that they didn't feel that the contract protected the district, that the amendment protected the district. And they, our lawyer was here at the time. He's the one that had gone through it and approved it. But they wanted the lawyer to review it again. And he, there was no change required.
They didn't-
So they're
They didn't
waiting.
they didn't do a legal review. That was their review, their interpretation, non-legal review
Mhm.
versus a legal review.
And so they asked for a legal review again, and
Or-
it has not been responded to, correct?
No,
It has been responded to.
our lawyer was here and responded.
Since then, have we sent them something that said that the lawyer reiterates?
I will review and get back to you on that. I would hate
'Cause-
to,
I'm not sure why we would ask our lawyer
To review what
review something
he-
he's already reviewed.
right.
Well,
My-
I certainly could question our lawyer, but I don't have permission.
I had a thorough response from him regarding the letter that was provided by the chair of that company. So, or of the board of that company. So I had an extremely thorough response. I had an extremely thorough conversation with the director of that agency on the phone. And I have recently reached out and reminded them that they have not signed and turned in that amendment. So I don't believe that I'm shirking my responsibility here in any way.
I just want to make sure that we're doing, even if it's on their side, I just want to make sure the district's doing what it's,
Yeah,
not just what we're obligated to do, but maybe even a little bit beyond that, just to make sure that we're not putting the risk of people needing services
absolutely.
out
Sounds like
there.
we did.
I don't
We
think we
did.
need to argue it. I just was my opinion that we should probably make sure that we're not losing anybody that needs the services.
And I agree.
And I agree as well.
Okay.
We're in agreement.
Excellent.
All right, number 20. So this one is the, what we just done? 19?
18 is North Douglas and
Inconsistency.
report.
Oh, okay. And the only issue with this is that it says stiff quarterly report deadlines, and it was supposed to say APR quarterly report deadlines. The stiff reports have all been submitted on time, every single one of them. So the APR reports though, and so you guys are all aware of that, and as am I. So
What is the APR?
the
Just remind me.
quarterly report to ODOT.
What's the words? What's the APR?
APR. It is the periodic report, agency periodic
Okay.
report.
Okay, I could
Boy,
not
I
get
almost
to
got
figure out
there.
what APR was.
All right. The coordinated plan. So as you know, we had applied for a TGM planning grant, and we went through the process with ODOT to select a consultant, and it seems it has been the marathon of getting it, but I just got today that we have authorization to issue the notice to proceed. So that is extremely good news. So we have a consultant. We will be able to issue the notice like tomorrow, and we'll be able to do our coordinated plan and our transit master plan.
Is this another software?
No, 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 no.
Do they have software?
No.
I sure hope they have software.
So the TGM grant is a transportation growth management planning
Mhm.
grant. And it is, we're using it in conjunction with our STIF funding. So I sent a check for the match money like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And so we got the go ahead today. So what we do is we work with the consultant, we provide them all kinds of information and they do the data. So City of Roseburg TSP, the
Yes,
transportation
I know
system plan.
what that is.
Yes,
And
so
then
Kind of like that for transit.
exactly.
it's
yeah.
bigger.
It
Theirs is
is,
bigger. Ours is
Yeah.
focused on transit.
That's, yeah,
Our-
theirs is
ours-
bigger.
yeah, theirs has a lot of transit elements put into it that we specifically asked them to put into it. They asked us, what do we need in order to get the STIF funding to have our projects if we're not allowed to use the 2013 Douglas County plan,
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they helped us out a lot with that. So now we get to do one that is specific to transit. And then any other one of these transportation system plans that wants to, they can adopt our transit master plan as an addendum to their plan if they want to. It's not a requirement.
okay. Who's our
So-
consultant?
Kittleson and Associates.
I wonder, okay.
So why are there only 20? But in the email we got from ODOT, there was 27. I know one of them was null because it was having to do with charter bus. And we don't charter our buses, but there was 20. I believe, 24 or 27. And then
I'm not quite sure to which email you're referring.
The
there
one
was just
from
one that ODOT
Jennifer.
sent to me that I sent out to the board.
Yeah, I don't have that one.
Oh, okay,
So I can't give you a comparison answer.
okay.
This one's the final.
This is the final room.
This was, it was 47 pages long and it was,
Part of
It
it
went
is in
through it
my
all.
back seat because I haven't finished. it.
but anyways, I just,
Very heavy reading.
Jennifer's not on to ask.
So that is site review. No, Jennifer is on her way to Common Falls to do.
Another one.
Yeah. So any questions on that extremely lengthy?
Site review report.
Mhm.
Well, it was thorough.
All right, so nobody had questions online, you guys are muted and don't wanna.
Yeah.
Okay, subcommittee update, Mike.
So I actually don't have any new information. I've called them a few times.
I think we could look
Oh,
at
I
getting
don't
a
know where
different
that-
lawyer if
Is the
Ron
attorney?
can't be responsive.
The attorney?
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't responded to me either, but I did before we joined, I think I said at the last meeting, before we formed the subcommittee, I did reach out to special districts and I forwarded to you, Sarah, and who else is on that committee? Kat?
I
Yeah.
reached out to the South Coast Business Development Center and got an outline of stuff from them.
Okay. But were you able to follow up with the special districts with that email, with that lady?
More on-
No, because I want to talk with Ron
Right.
first on the RFP.
Okay,
Well-
Because that could be a little awkward.
Why is Ron
Being
not
approaching.
responding?
so I'll go into the office personally on Wednesday. I can't do it tomorrow. I'm in the office.
I called him on the cell phone this afternoon too. to see if I can get him that way.
I'll just go into the office and go to the window and see if maybe he's out sick or something.
I sent him an email this afternoon with the contract in it.
Uh-huh.
And then a follow-up email because if there was an addition to it. And I sent him a text that said, hey, I sent you an email and hoping you can check this out and give us a response by Friday. And he texted and said, got it, thanks, will do.
Oh,
Finally,
So the key for contacting Ron is to, yeah.
multiple texting.
No, you email him and give him the full picture and text him and let him know, I sent you an email, I've outlined this, what needs to happen and the timeline, and then he responds. I don't really have an issue getting in touch with him.
He likes you better than us.
You know, of course, I realize sometimes he's in a trial. You know, the one time he texted me, told me I'm in trial for the next 3 days. So it'll be like Thursday before I can get back to you. I realize that this is not a situation, the one that you're discussing, that that I need to be in the middle of, but I'm more than happy to, you know, point him in the right direction and get him to one of you guys.
Yeah, I'm just looking for some timelines and what we can or shouldn't do.
So the RFP software that I was talking about, we'll have that up and running come Monday, and it's really cool in a lot of ways. So you can assign different people to different portions of the process. So there can be somebody that uploads all the documents and responds to all the questions. And then when it's time to review, you can have a set of people that review for content to make sure like everything was turned in on time. So they actually qualify that way, and that they meet all of the technical pieces. And then you can have somebody else do the review for the funding piece, you know, what their costs were and all of that, so that the two are separate, and you're reviewing just on the qualifications, and then you review with different people looking at it for the range of costs.
So this software that I already love could write the RFP.
No,
No,
It can't write the RFP.
it's the management tool.
It's a
Yes.
management tool.
So-
Okay,
but we
For the-
can, oh, sorry.
Sorry. For the timeline that we have, if it takes any longer to get a hold of Ron for all this, as you know, special districts offers legal advice to us. They can be a secondary or tertiary, however we want to look at it.
yeah,
So I'm going to recommend that subcommittee go ahead and reach out to them regardless of Ron. And when Ron comes online, you can update him, get him up to speed and get his opinion. But I think that
I'll give him a
because of
call this
time,
week to get that, yeah.
because of time issues, we should
Yeah.
just move
I
forward.
agree, definitely.
Okay,
Thank you.
so procurement policy, that's oh, sorry. Before we move on to that, before the meeting, I forgot to sign a form at the end of our last meeting that we're all here. Christine brought it to me, so I did sign that. It was our harassment form or policy. And
Harassment.
I post dated it to today, even though we adopted it back then, because I don't sign things and date them beforehand. I date them the day that I sign. So I just wanted to put that on the record and give it to you guys as well. So procurement policy.
Procurement policy, so I forwarded that one to you a few days ago. So we have procurement referred to in our fiscal policies, but FTA requires that we have a separate procurement policy. So this is the result of it's a model policy that is provided by ODOT, and they you fill in the information in an Excel spreadsheet and do like a mail merge. So it puts the appropriate thing in the appropriate place. And then you have to go through, because it does give you an odd error field here and there. So just to go through and make sure that everything is copacetic. You'll notice that in several places, like on page 26, it's talking about formal purchases and approval authority. And so that's one that happens to require, 3 levels. It's something that I could not approve just by myself. It would also require somebody from the board to approve it as well. But I used in multiple places as the secondary person, a finance manager, because when we have a finance manager on board, that would be an appropriate thing for them to have approval authority, depending on the level. So any place that it says finance manager, it's because that would be appropriate once we have one on board. But this was approved by ODOT once I did I was gonna say the Vulcan mind mouth,
Yes.
the word mail merge. I forwarded it on to ODOT and had them take a look through, make sure that it all looked good, and they said it's good to go. You guys can approve it and know that you'll be in compliance.
Checked off our list.
Mhm.
So has anybody at the table opened the email and read through this prior to just now?
It's in my back seat.
I didn't read the email because it was too damn long.
It is very long.
So I'm gonna,
We have one that's actually fairly similar, that covers a lot of this stuff already. It may not include some of these 4 or 5 bulleted items, I can't promise you that.
Those are the
But we
ones
actually
we
already
were
have one
missing.
in, yeah.
I know,
In place.
I know we do have one, but if, I would hate for people to vote on an adoption for something that nobody's read.
I think that's fair.
I did go through it, but it was like chewing crackers in a desert.
Until we have a policy in place that addresses these items that were not addressed in our policy that we currently have, we cannot do the RFP. So if we do not adopt this tonight, we cannot move forward with the RFP for the dial right services, and you cannot move forward with the RFP for the other service that you're looking for.
But ODOT has reviewed it and said it's
ODOT has
good.
reviewed.
I haven't seen anything from ODOT, and I appreciate the idea that we should go forward with it. However, I'm not inclined to vote on, let anybody vote on anything that they haven't read.
Well, let's, we got.
It's 2 weeks to our next meeting.
So anyway, I think that we need to move forward as quick as possible. So we got these, most of this is already in play. So we have 5 bulleted items, and maybe we just kind of take a look and go through those real quick about the 5 bulleted items, because those are really the only additions. We actually don't need to read all of this, because most of this is already in process.
I'm not fine with doing that.
Motion to adopt.
I think that's out of order.
That's the way I feel about it.
Second,
You have a motion on the floor.
It's out of order.
You have a motion on the floor.
It was called out of order.
I don't care. You have a motion on the floor.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. To adopt it. There's a second. Any discussion? I'll discuss. I think it's inappropriate for us as an elected body to adopt anything that nobody on this table has read. I would move that, I would ask that it be voted against so that we can at least go through the 5 bulleted points. Any other discussion?
What are the timelines for the things that we have set up that cannot move forward if we don't read this?
So the timeline for the dial right RFP, it is for the documents to be released on Monday, the 26th, and for the meeting to happen on May 4th, and then the procurement would close on the 14th, and then we would have the following week to review the submissions, and then the plan was to call a special meeting to have the board be able to review it so that we can get it to ODOT before June 1st. Otherwise, we will not have an executed grant agreement to cover the 5310 and STF and STIF funding that is for the dial rights.
So
generally, I can tell you what the 5 bulleted items
So what
Okay.
would be missed if we didn't go over the 5 bulleted items in the next 10 minutes?
I'm sorry.
What would be missed in our deadlines if we didn't take 10 minutes to go through the 5 bulleted items?
Well, our next meeting is May 10th.
So we wouldn't be missing that meeting because 10 minutes happens in 10 minutes.
I don't,
He's just saying, let's take the 10 minutes to
Go through the
go
5
through
bulleted
the
items.
5 bulleted items and then pass a motion, I think is what he's saying.
okay. Gotcha.
So I guess we'll call the question of adoption of this procurement policy. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed, say aye. No, or nay? Nay.
Say no. So the,
Okay.
All right, motion fails.
so I think the independent, I can just kind of summarize
Okay.
these a little bit if that helps instead
Yeah.
of pulling them out, but independent cost estimate. So when you put these together, you generally have to have an idea of what you think this is gonna cost. So you think it's gonna cost whatever, $25,000 or whatever number it is, and that you've got funds that are budgeted basically that can pay for that item. That's pretty much what it is before you send it out. So it's just part of the,
Where's that at?
Page 36.
that's gonna be on every one of them, because you're doing typically a qualification based proposal, so this isn't like the lowest bid.
It's
I
your
think
wild ass guess.
It's your wild, exactly. So based on your experience, your knowledge,
Mhm.
previous RFPs, all sorts of different things. So I know, and my work, we have a whole list of things, and we know that, we should expect so many hours, it should take so many hours. The cost should be so much. And anyway, so we kind of come up with a number, and sometimes we're pretty close and sometimes we're not.
But you have to have a place to start.
You have to have a
so-
place to start, and that's really all that is.
Okay.
So you've done some homework ahead of time to know that, yes, you think you have, and you think you've got the money budgeted to be able to do that. You have a source for that.
I'm sorry, John, I need to know what the vote is. Not just failed, I need the actual number of how many yeas. and how
One
many-
yay.
And
I didn't hear anything from them.
I need to.
Lonnie and
Sarah and Lonnie, did you vote on the last motion?
Yeah, I voted yay.
2 yays?
I
Sarah?
voted yay.
3
So
days.
it would still fail.
3 fails.
Thank you.
So that's pretty much what that is. And then, when stuff comes in and you use that to help make your determinations. And
Is that the
Things on
cost
track.
or price analysis?
that's the independent cost estimate.
Okay.
The cost price analysis, I think, is really, again, looking at that's where you get into some of the hours. Is it the principal versus somebody maybe that's lower in the food chain at that company that's doing the work versus some of those items. And so all of those are negotiation. You can negotiate in terms of who some of those personnel are. Hey, we don't need the owner of the company charging $200 an hour when I can get this drafter to do it for $50.
Got it.
Okay, so that's kind of, so you're looking at what components of the RFP, the scope basically that they can do versus what it's gonna cost, and that just kind of helps keep your costs under control. And then the bid protest, so now you've gone through and you've selected a company or whatever, you selected the bidder. And then you provide a notice of intent to award to them, and there's typically a protest period of whatever is defined in the contract. So other people could say, hey, yeah, they can actually request the scorer's notes. So when you're in there, you have to be real careful what's being said, because it's all documented, and what you're writing, scribble, this is stupid, I think this person's a jerk, I don't like them. Those things all count. And so if you're taking things that are maybe outside of some of the criteria and you're using that to influence your decision and score somebody lower that didn't get it, they can protest the award. And then there's a process on how all that works.
What
So
page is that?
36 also.
Is it? I don't see it.
So,
let me know if I missed anything, but I'm just give me what it generally is.
So 5.9 as a whole is the independent cost estimate and cost price analysis. So cost analysis, or price analysis is 5.9.2.1. Cost analysis is 5.9.2.2.
But bid
bid.
protest procedures, I don't see that.
Oh,
Right.
bid protest procedures, sorry.
Which I think goes backwards because
Yeah.
bidding is in the lower files.
And I think I ran across it at like 35. Something like that.
Rejections of bids.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't see those words.
Protest response is page 44. Requirements for protest also 44.
Protest response.
That's part of bid protest
Yeah.
procedures, is a series, okay. Standards of conduct governing employees and board members.
Starts on page 43.
Page
So the
43.
so standards of conduct, so that covers a whole bunch of things, but so typically when we have we have a motion, we have a discussion item on something on the agenda. And let's just say one of us has a conflict of interest. Remember, there's two different types of conflicts of interest. There's the actual conflict of interest, and then there's the potential conflict of
Yes,
interest. And so in actual, you would excuse yourself. We've seen John do that before. You would excuse yourself and you can't participate in the discussion or the motion or vote. Okay, and in actual one, you can't. Okay, you can say, well, I do this, it might impact me, based on this, I own this. And so, it's possible that it could enrich me or one of my family members or something like that, who works for somebody. And so I have an actual, I don't know if it will, but it could, but you can then, once you declared it, you can then participate and you can participate in the discussion and the vote as long as potential is not actual.
yeah, that's what,
In contracting, if you have an actual or potential, you're off. You're done. You have to be completely removed from the process,
and even with potential.
even with potential.
Okay.
So that's a difference in there. You can't be swayed by your contractor wants to take out the lunch. Talk about what it is you guys are trying to do. That would be something that might be kind of common. So trying to sway members or things like that. So that's
Contractors
Yeah.
take you to dinner,
gifts, things like that. So you have to watch out for stuff like that.
cars.
If you're on like the committee to score those proposals, you don't get to talk to anybody. You don't even get to talk to each other about it.
Wow.
So there's no discussion. It's an independent evaluation. And you're not having discussions with them. They can't email you. They can't, maybe one of them that came in, maybe did a presentation and somebody knows you, like, hey, how'd it go? You can't even tell, even if you've come to a tentative decision that we want to, award it, until we've done that official notice of intent to award, there's no discussion. And that's with employees or board members.
So that if you have even the slightest knowledge of a person, you should probably recuse yourself.
Exactly. Yep.
Makes sense. Absolutely, because
And not if you know
Like a
them,
car.
but more if you can know somebody because maybe they worked for you in the past or something like that. But if there's a potential for you to receive some financial gain, it all comes down to money
They're gonna
for
kick
you or
back.
your family
Yeah.
members
They're gonna
or
pay me
other
10%.
people that maybe are not family members that live in your house.
80%.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of things like that. That's really what that comes down to. There's certain rules, there's things we can talk about. Things are awarded on criteria, the criteria that you said you were going to use in your proposals. So it has to be based on that. It can't be based on other things.
And these things weren't included in our original,
I guess not, yeah. But that's
but we need them and now we have them.
and this will add those back into.
And
basically what
ODOT
we
says
have.
they're okay, so we should sign it.
They were partially there.
Partially there, just
Yes.
not to their satisfaction.
Yes.
Mike, I appreciate that. And I guess we could entertain a new motion.
Did I miss it one just before we go? Did I miss anything or? Okay.
Nope.
State something.
I make a motion that we vote to pass the FTA procurement policy.
Second.
Cat makes a motion to adopt the procurement policy, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? I'd just like to say I really appreciate that because I really think it's
Important, you know what's in it.
not just important to know what's in it, but making sure that your fellow board members and public elect are aware of what they're voting on and not just making blind knee-jerk reactions to get the day over with. So with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Lonnie, did you vote?
Yeah, I voted aye.
Okay,
I didn't hear him
unanimous.
either.
Motion
There's a short
passes,
vote, yeah.
so we will be adopting the
Do you want me to sign
Public
it?
Transportation District Uptd FTA procurement policy. 2021. That's nothing to sign, right? That just goes in our policy book.
No,
Okay.
we got a page attached. I found it in this stack of hay.
Oh, where am I at? Record retention policy.
So the requirement was for a record retention policy. When I did the research, I found that our public records access policy had not been updated. And then it just made sense to also include archiving and disposal in this as well.
So we have a little bit of a public records policy, right?
And this is all of that public records policy and in it was the same cost per page, everything straight. across
Right,
the
right,
board.
because we had modified that at the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I left everything in that portion of it from public record here in the middle of page 3. All the way through public records requests on page 4, fees for public record on page 5, fee collection on page 6, waiver and reduction of fees, all of that document review, that all the way through page 7 is all the same stuff that we had in our original public records access policy. So we added in storage standards, records retention, FTA record retention, and I looked up all of the OARs that are,
So 3 years from date of final payment.
on most,
Most everything.
on most everything that is stiff related is 6 years after final payment or disposal if it's a vehicle. So if we have a vehicle for, say, 15 years, then the total record retention would be 21 years from the date of purchase.
And do we have a vehicle shredder for that shred? I actually like this one. I did read this one through. It wasn't as dry because I was more interested.
Right.
Matt, I'm sorry, just break away for just a second. You were wanting to talk on one of these subjects, but you're signaling that you're leaving.
6.7.
We're
So-
almost there.
So can we do this real quick and jump to 6.7 without
Yep.
screwing anything up? Okay, let's go ahead. Has everybody had a chance to review this or have questions about it?
I already made all my comments.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve the record retention. Man, my mouth ain't
Public
working.
records, access, retention, archiving, and disposal policy.
And that was John's voice. Was made by Mike, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Unanimous, no need for a nay. Policy is adopted. And that was unanimous. we're going to jump 6.7 up to next. And this will be the RFP for dollar. What?
I think it's 6.6.
I'm sorry, did you say 6.6 or 6.7?
I think 6.7.
He wants to talk about 7.
7. So we're gonna jump 6.7 up to now. So RFP for DAR services.
And we've covered a whole lot of that, really, with the procurement policy passed. As long as I have approval on the contract and the lease agreement by Friday from Ron and from ODOT, then on Monday, I can go ahead and do the upload of documents and the initial invitation to bid.
Okay.
And it goes back out to the same list that we had before, and then of course wherever else it's advertised. But yeah.
Yes, well, so it goes out to the same list as before, but the requirement is also that we add Uptd, and there was another,
American Public Transit Association.
that might be,
That's
Yeah.
after.
so, oh, yeah. Uptd, yes. Okay, so at the national level,
Yeah.
though, that was the requirement. We did not advertise this at the national level. And that is.
For dial-a-ride providers?
Yep, it's federal funding.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that, there will be a couple of them on there that we did not previously have on here. And it really changes the landscape. And so that's, I've been asked, how do you think this is going to play out? I don't know.
So
I don't
there's
know.
actually federal vendors that would service our little area.
Yep. So when LTD went up for their RFP in 2017, they had the same dial-a-ride provider, demand response provider, because they do their ADA paratransit, dial-a-ride, and medical transportation all out of one place. And they ended up getting a national provider that came in and took over the whole of the operation. So it's entirely possible that we might get.
Because we're on EG.
No, but we're right
Yeah.
for takeover.
Yeah, so it is entirely possible that somebody at the national level could provide a response that says, yeah, we can not only do this, but for the hours and the days that you want, but we can do it for less money than any other provider. We just don't know.
Go and squeeze down all the locals and jack it up.
So my question is, and as soon as I'm done, we'll get to Matt since he's wanting to leave. But just like the US federal government has a Buy American First
Mhm.
with all cars, they don't have Toyotas, they don't have Hondas, they don't have whatever.
I think that's still in our contract saying like.
It is.
But can we not mimic them and give preferential treatment to a local Oregon business before we choose a national one?
It all has to be written into our RFP. And what we can give preference to is DBEs, disadvantaged business enterprise, which would be small businesses that are either brand new or they have less than a certain dollar amount threshold that they do business per year. So there are various different types.
Operated by women or
Women
people
do
of
minority
color.
businesses.
Women
Women-run businesses.
minority,
What-
brand new.
What about local, small nonprofits?
I don't think they qualify, but I don't know.
Okay, Matt, before you have to leave,
Just wanted to make mention that the.
Matt Drosser, UVDN.
Yes. So I'm actually glad that the RFP process is being reasserted the way it is, because after the onsite, a lot more things have come to light So like, for example, just listing out the drug and alcohol policy, the lease agreements on the vehicles, even the additional software that could be involved in processes. There's always cost tied to time and effort. And for a provider such as myself, you want to make sure that your budget is as close to spot on as you can. So like, for example, I know the drug and alcohol policy, we're going to have a slightly bigger budget than what we normally have because of the randomizing, which means we would eat that cost. And
Until you get reimbursed.
Huh?
Yeah, until you get reimbursed.
until you get reimbursed, right? But, you know, again, this is a funding process where we're not making any money.
Mhm.
We're actually losing money until we get reimbursed.
Right.
And that makes it really kind of tough. So the tighter that we can get it, and the quicker we can respond back in a turnaround, the better. So the drug and alcohol policy, it's good to know about these pieces. And it is going to be important, probably, I think, to all the other providers that are out there. And just a comment, I know we had a late breaking transit provider. I don't have any information on them other than what little I was able to Google, which isn't much. And the budget getting shifted over, my board was not happy seeing the budgets get shifted when we went through the RP process, was granted the money, and then it got shifted to allow for this new provider to come in. And so the providers are what they are, but my board is fairly particular. When they see, oh, hey, we got the budget. Oh, no, we don't have the budget. So what's up with this funding source? And then I try and indicate what you had indicated to me. And they're like, we're not really convinced. Because the funding, STIF funding had been used for these purposes before. We know what that money was for. This doesn't seem to be like one of those occasions. So how is that going to work? So my board had a lot of questions after that first go around. So I'm actually pleased that we're getting a redo. So I just hope that the communication is going to be more clear in this part of the process. I know we're on a really short timeline. So I'm hoping we get lots of communication all at once, or as much as possible. That way, that'll make my board happy. I'm sure it'll make other small agencies' boards happy. And yeah, I think indicating that there is going to be time and effort and cost factors involved with lease agreements with the vehicles, for example. I know our agency in particular has had some bugaboos about backup vehicles. And I'd really like to get something corrected, especially when a vehicle that's not even ours we had to deal with and is currently over at Schwarm's with an overhaul. The tranny needs to get replaced to the tune of $4,000, and that's not even ours. So and we actually contacted Gala, and she said that well, that's not even our vehicle anymore. It belongs to the district. So I know Kenny had already been in contact with the dispatch office, but based off of your response, I don't think they gave that information passed on to you. So I'll make sure Kenny reconnects and sure that all this up-to-date information, like on the bid that Swarm's office, has put together, that you get a handle on it, so that you get the actual document, and then see what you want to do with it from there. And the other piece is the small little van, the little venture, because we're now having to use this. There's no other choice unless there are other choices on the lot. We still need paperwork saying it belongs to the district, at least something in the glove box. The fact there are no tags, it still belongs to SES and other documents. There's a there's insurance card that has different information on there. It looks all really sketchy.
Well, that's just COVID, Matt. Reality is in
I
suspense for the
understand.
rest of the time.
And I
It's
understand that.
also
that provides-
micromanaging, the board shouldn't have to worry about.
But I'm just saying that these are all things that with this whole process, we need to kind of factor in that the stuff is happening as the RFP process is going.
I don't know how the titling is gonna work with the DMV any faster.
I do think though that, once the RFP, before the RFP concludes and all of that, that we probably schedule just a stiff stack. And it may be just a simple re-verification of what they did before, but maybe there's some based on who we intend to award to. There may be, need to be some modifications. So if we schedule it ahead of time, that everybody can have it on the calendar.
That's a really good idea.
That's all I had. I just wanted to bring up the fact that I applied for this. I know we got a tight timeline, and there's also reality still happening at the same time. So we need to address that stuff all at once.
Well, remember, until this goes out on that procurement software, you can ask whatever question you want. But once it goes.
out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then the response
No more,
back from
no more talking.
from the district has to go
My
to
lesson.
everybody.
Yeah,
Right. Then it goes out to everybody.
exactly, yeah.
So is there anything we have to make a change to that?
No. I don't
Okay.
think so, yeah.
All right. We can move along to the
So
next
6-7.
item.
Back to the regular scheduled program.
6-5.
265, thanks, Mike. Can you leave me your card before you? Okay, I'll get hold of it. next time.
We in the bylaw.
Bylaws amendment. Thank you.
So this is in response to the request from the board to have the videos posted online on a YouTube channel. And Christine has done most of the footwork on this. She's got the YouTube channel up and ready to go. But in order for us to actually be able to do this and be in compliance with everything, our bylaws state that our minutes are going to be posted. It does not state anything about videos. So this is just an update.
So do we
Housekeeping.
have to have do we have to have that in our bylaws, I guess is all I'm trying to say,
It just.
or can we just do it?
Well, it has to state somewhere what our process is. So if it's not going to be in the bylaws where it states what our, and it's the yellow back here on page 6. So previously, we just had minutes, that the minutes of each board meeting would be recorded and a copy provided to each member. And the minutes will stand as read at the next meeting unless corrections are made by the board. And then goes into executive sessions and such. What we've added is audio visual recordings of the meetings shall be made available to the public via posting to Uptd's YouTube media site within 30 days following each meeting or as soon as is practicable.
Cheryl, hold on a second, I'm sorry. Lonnie and Sarah, Cheryl is currently reading the addition proposed for our bylaws. So just in case you didn't have it in your email or up to follow along with us, she's actively reading what's being added. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. And then with records retention, we've just added Uptd retention schedule for all meetings records. Adhere to OAR 166-150-00517. Record retention for all Uptd meeting records are retained for the following: minutes, agendas, resolutions, indexes, and exhibits not retained permanently elsewhere in records are permanent. And B, retain executive session minutes for 10 years. And audio visual recordings are 1 year after minutes are prepared and approved. Other records and exhibits not pertinent to minutes, 5 years.
Question. Permanent B, retain executive session minutes for 10 years, audio or visual recordings. There are none and will be none.
Audio
You have
visual
the option.
recordings.
Oh,
That's why Ron always tells me to turn it off.
I didn't know it was an option. I thought it was a.
You do have
ORS
the
that
option
you had
of
to
keeping
keep
me in
on.
here and me actually recording.
Oh, okay.
Minutes, yep.
All right. How neat.
All right, so that's the language to update the bylaws to allow us to post the videos to YouTube.
Move to amend the bylaws to include that language.
Motion.
I'll
to
second.
Mark already did, but thank you. Motion to approve, approve the update of the bylaws. Made by Mike, seconded by Mark. Any discussion?
How long before we can get what we've got uploaded?
Within 30 days.
You're the
About
tech,
30
you're the
days.
techie lady.
Some of that will
Well,
take a
no,
while.
we have the back issues that I have uploaded to my YouTube. But you guys are gonna have to upload them on your YouTube.
This will be moving forward. I don't think they're gonna do anything retroactive.
We'll
Is
probably
it?
do just the one since you guys said that that's what you wanted to do moving forward.
Oh,
Makes
really?
sense.
It does?
It does to me. If it doesn't to you. you
Well,
can-
it doesn't to me. I think that there should be a complete record of whatever there is. But I'm just one person.
I would just, yeah, keep moving forward, and if we have time to do it, as we have time, just, I'm not opposed to what Kat suggested.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
But I'm just saying,
Good.
if you, when you have time, it's not a priority. To me, those are not a priority.
The old ones.
Any more discussion? Lonnie, Sarah? Hearing none, let's call for the vote. All in favor of adopting the motion?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
that's unanimous. No opposed. So it is adopted. Was there a, oh, thank you for that. 6.6, door provider contract for RFP.
We did that.
No, this
No.
is 6, this is
Oh.
the actual contract.
Oh,
So I just forwarded, we just did this one to, I don't actually think we forwarded this to you.
No, it just happened with.
No.
But I
Um,
think the motion speaks for itself, the suggested motion.
Yeah, the suggested one, yeah. So as we previously discussed, it was noted that we did not include a copy of the contract, the blank contract with the RFP. And so what I did is I took the federally required procurement clauses that were provided by the site reviewers. If you look here for operations management and subrecipient, it gives you which contracts are required to have these clauses in them. And the clauses I can print out for you. I did forward them to you though, but it's like 36 pages long, something like that. And so I took all of the ones that were required, I added them into this document. They start on number 20. And you'll note it says contractor shall comply with following US government required clauses applicable to operational service contracts. I've highlighted a couple of things just to draw your attention to them. On number 21, it states these clauses shall not be modified except to identify the subcontractor who will be subject to the provisions. So these federally required clauses, they have to be here as is, they
Yeah, no, I
cannot be
recommend it.
changed.
For other ones.
So the other one that I highlighted was regarding payments. Number 13 is
Number 38.
13 and 38, yeah. So there's two, and number 13 under our old contract, 13.2. The piece that I highlighted, it just says upon submission and approval, and I've underlined approval of all required and requested documents. So I know that there have been a number of times that it's been stated that I've been late in paying providers. And some of those are absolutely true statements and some are not. The approval of required and requested documents is what is is required to start that 30-day clock of everything is complete. Now I've got your invoice, it's accurate. And that's when the 30-day clock for approval starts. So for example, the end of the quarter was March 31st. And I get the first set of documents from a provider on April 7th. And going through those documents, there are so many inconsistencies that I provide the documents back, highlighted the inconsistencies, provided a detail of what's inconsistent and what needs to be corrected. And not sure when I'll get those back. And this happens with multiple providers every single quarter. I go through the documents and we'll figure out what doesn't match, when the actual expenditures are less than the invoice, when things are listed in two places. And so if I didn't catch it, we'd be paying double, those kinds of things. And I'm sure that it's not intentional, it's just how, things happen sometimes. So, that is how we have it in our contract, that we have always been abiding by, right? But when you go to number
Do we ever
38,
develop a checklist or something for them to just sort
them.
of follow, these are the things you need to do and make sure that, this matches this, or compare your, something that says your invoice total and this, and hey, they don't match. And just almost like an Excel calculation or something.
So I did provide an Excel spreadsheet at the beginning of the biennium for them to use, that they could fill in the blanks and it would match exactly with what is in Optus, what I have to put the report into. Some of them faithfully use it, and some of them faithfully use it and are accurate, and some of them faithfully use it and need to have corrections done every time. So, and no, I haven't gone to that extent, and I guess only because I know that personally, if somebody provided that step-by-step for something that I've been doing for years, I would kind of feel like that was condescending. So, I could definitely do that. And hopefully it would help. Yeah, I could do that for sure. So on number 38, it gives the federal language that's required, which is prime contractor agrees further to return retainage payments to each subcontractor within 30 days after the subcontractor's work is satisfactorily complete. So the service is complete at the end of the quarter. The work is satisfactorily complete when the paperwork is turned in correctly, when all of the bugs have been worked out of it. So I know that we had at one point discussed having a committee that would include some of the providers to look at contracts. And I was told that was absolutely not okay, that it's actually against the law to do that. So
Who said that?
the review,
Oh,
they cannot be involved in setting the contract that applies to them. So just like I couldn't be involved in doing the contract for UCAN when I was still a UCAN employee, I couldn't be oversight for that particular contract. So the number of clauses that this adds, it was like 13 additional pages to the contract. And there are some things that are kind of repeated, but they're expressed differently. And one gives more detail. The contract that we had previously been using gives more line by line detail. The federal clause, though, has to be in there with the specific wording. So some things looks like it's covered twice, but they don't conflict.
Well, we just use the Douglas County contract,
Mhm.
modified very slightly
Yes.
to get through.
Yeah, and it worked for well, it worked until now. And this will get us up to speed. We will be where we're supposed to be. So I did my best to meld them together. I've submitted them to Ron for review. I've asked for that review to give us a response no later than Friday. And the response and the text was that he would do that. So if he reviews this and either provides changes and says this is what needs to be changed, or says, hey, this is good to go. Do the motion that I had suggested was, what was it?
To allow you to include the contract when
Oh,
received
yes.
from district council.
Yes. That way I can include it in the packet, start the RFP, and be in the process before our next meeting without having to call a special meeting for you guys to review this like over the weekend.
Mhm.
We get all of district council onto the last page instead of having.
Oh, yeah, we can do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I don't
So-
like that either.
It was just the
Formatting.
the draft.
Oh, you already have it.
There was, oh yeah, this one I did, and that's why it went onto the other page. Because the one that I sent to Ron and to you first was missing something.
Yeah,
Oh,
you said-
that's
and
right. You said
sent
it
back
did it
out.
twice.
All right.
So I'll make a motion that we allow Cheryl to include the contract when received in the RFP when received from district council. Then Mark second.
Motion's been made to allow Cheryl to include the contract when received from general counsel in the RFP, which would allow us to move forward with the invitation prior to bid to our next board meeting. Second by Mike, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So I think we have unanimous. Couldn't really hear Lonnie.
Yeah, sir, and I say it at the same time, so I'm an aye.
All right. That's awesome.
So our 661 through 4 separate issues here.
Yep, those are all the things that we did not have in our policy that are now included in the policy.
Okay,
And they're the things that apply specifically to Delaware that we have to have oversight.
that was all part of that report.
Yes.
Okay,
That's what they call from the NUB.
general manager's report.
This is what I have done.
Okay,
Oh,
Jennifer Boardman is not available,
she hasn't got to Clement
No.
Falls yet.
not on agenda items. Let's go around the table. Anybody has anything, Mike?
Not on the agenda, budget. So I assume we're maybe gonna have budget committee next month.
Yes.
What's a typical month for budget stuff for adoption in June?
Yes,
Okay.
so I've provided all of the grant totals to Laura.
Okay.
And we're doing the rollover on the stiff funding and
And there's some weird advertising deadlines and type of advertisement that you have to do. And it just in the news review.
yes,
So just make sure whatever those are, you need on it. One's like a couple weeks, one's 3 weeks, something, I don't know what all the details were.
Yeah,
I
they're-
did, I did Lance Colley helped me through all that.
very specific. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all.
I don't think so.
Mark?
Nope.
Sarah, do you have anything to add that's not on agenda item?
I've got nothing.
Lonnie?
Pass.
Pass. So I did. One, I wanted the board to consider an idea for another bylaws amendment. As you know, when we first formed, pretty much, we put term limits on how many times a chair can run or be consecutive in a position of chair. I, as a lame duck chair, would like to ask you guys to consider the idea of not having a lame duck sit in the position of chair. I think that I've done, for my first time ever chairing, I feel I've done pretty well. Maybe other people don't, I don't know. But I see great potential for somebody in my position to just throw their hands in the air and not really care and just want to have the position for, hey, everybody, I'm chair. So I think it would be good for the board to, moving forward, not consider anybody for chair that doesn't have at least 2 years remaining in their term. I'm not saying that we need to vote on that today or write it up, just something to consider
Something to think
for you
about.
guys to think about going forward. I believe May is my last meeting, or do I do June? I do June. Okay.
Everybody either has 2 or they have 4
Years.
years
Unless
on their
they're-
term. At
Oh, no, I'm
at
not
the
talking
time.
about anybody here. I'm talking about an actual bylaw policy because I just, yeah, just think it's something that the board should consider going forward.
Based on your personal experience.
Based on my personal experience, I mean, really, if I was somebody who really didn't care, there could be a lot of problems caused for the district, having a chair that's just not
Not
responsive.
available
right?
and not responsive.
Now,
yeah.
of course, the board can remove a chair at any time, but I think it'd be easier just to avoid the potential in the future. Wanted to mention on delegations, that I've delegated a lot as chair. And part of that reason was if, for example, the site review. If I showed up where you or Sarah could have showed up, I'd be taking experience away from you guys where I wasn't going to need it going forward. So that's why I chose to ask fellow board members to step in for the site review, because I didn't need the experience. I'm not running for re-election. I don't plan on getting elected to a district in the future. So I just wanted to explain that. Other than that, that's all I have. So we move on to public comment. To anybody online, we don't have anybody else here. Anybody, oh, I'm sorry, Cheryl, did you have anything for not on agenda?
Now, just if you guys want a copy of the required clauses, I have them here.
Can you send us up a budget schedule too, so we know kind of when the meeting might be for the budget committee?
Anybody in
So we
the
get it on the
public?
calendar.
Tasha, your picture showed up. Does that mean she wants to say something? No public comment, hearing none. Let's go to agenda build for the next meeting.
Ooh. I'd be willing to bet that we would have possibly cash handling procedures for dial-a-ride. We would definitely have a follow-up on the RFP process. Lease agreements. Oh, we should have, wait, that's 2 weeks. We might have Title VI plan to approve by then, but I don't know. The deadline is June, so I might have to prioritize something else.
So it's cash handling, drug and alcohol lease agreements and Title VI.
I think we already have the drug and alcohol under control by including it in the
I'm sorry.
RFP.
Okay, what was the other one after cash handling?
Lease agreement.
Lease agreements.
Lease agreement, sorry.
Yeah.
Follow up on that process.
And the RFP process.
Mhm. And then I can give an update on where we are on the rest of these findings. And I
Should there be anything on the master plan or the coordinated plan? Will those have kicked off, or is there anything for the board to do? Or
yes, so I will find out more. Yes, I'll find out more. I'm so excited about it, but I have never been the one that's is like kicking it off. I've been in the kickoff meetings, but I've never been the one responsible for them. Yes, so I believe that we have to have a board member that's part of the whole process, but I'll have to check into that. A board member, we're also gonna, the stiff staff committee is going to participate as part of our project advisory committee. So, and we'll have, Christine is also going to be part of the committee, as well as Shelley, just because that gives the insight from the system.
wouldn't hurt to have somebody from the stiff stack on there.
Yeah, the whole committee's going to be, yeah,
You can also have Ron show up, that'd be good.
at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll have an update on our process from Mike or anybody on the subcommittee. Anything else to bring back from this?
I don't think I have anything else.
Anybody else have anything for agenda build? Either Lonnie, Sarah, anybody here presently?
Nope, I'm good. We've covered it all that I can think of.
Anybody opposed to a motion to adjourn? Oh, what's wrong?
Oh, I was just thinking, Sarah was on for a whole session of the site review. Did you have anything that you wanted to insight that you?
Both of you were, weren't you?
They got over before I got on
Oh,
the
On the
final
Friday,
day. On
yeah.
that Friday, they were done by like 9:30.
oh,
10:15.
Oh, I sat in on that whole Monday. And it's nothing new for me because I did one when I worked for the tribe, but Cheryl did a good job answering all the questions that came up that first day, which seems to be the big day. Is the only insight I can offer.
okay. So unless somebody is opposed to it, we'll adjourn. It is 8:07 p.m.
Thanks, guys. That was a lot.
You I'll just throw the extra piece of paper into it. The problem is that I have is Ron's name separated from